This is the fifth in a series of resources that look at broad topics in macroeconomics. Part 1 considers the gross domestic product, defining it and each component part, working through a couple of examples, and considering the limitations of the GDP as a measure of welfare. Part 2 considers the difference between public and private goods and looks at certain issues arising from public goods. Part 3 inspects the difference between real and nominal measures, working through an example. Part 4 looks at unemployment, providing definitions for various types of unemployment, and also defining other factors involved in calculating unemployment rates. Part 5 considers the Consumer Price Index, defining it, working through examples, and explaining how the CPI applies to actual real-world problems. Part 6 looks at economic growth, suggesting general methods countries use to expand their economy. The Consumer Price Index, or CPI, is a measure used to give an idea of the cost of living. It uses the real nominal principle to compare that cost for many different years. CPI measures the changes in the cost of a fixed basket of goods. This is a collection of items that economists chose to represent the normal purchases of a typical individual. The components of the fixed basket of goods include food, clothing, housing, transportation, entertainment, and other expenses. But how exactly is the CPI calculated? Much like calculating the real gross domestic product, we must first select some year as a base year. Then we must determine the cost of the fixed basket of goods in both the base year and in the target year. To find the CPI, we divide the cost of the basket of goods for the current year divided by the cost for the base year. This quotient is then multiplied by 100. Let's see an example. Suppose in the year 2000, the basket of goods cost $400. In the year 2014, the same basket of goods cost $600. We want to find the Consumer Price Index for both years. In the year 2000, the cost of the basket of goods was $400. This amount also represents the cost in the base year. We have 400 divided by 400, which is 1. 1 multiplied by 100 is 100. In general, the CPI for any base year will be 100. What about the other year? In 2014, the basket of goods cost $600. Divided by the $400 cost in the base year, we have 1.5. Multiplied by 100, the Consumer Price Index in 2014 was 150. How does the Consumer Price Index help us? Again, it is an example of the real nominal principle, so it eliminates the effects of inflation. This allows us to compare the cost of living, or any cost, over time. This allows us to determine what nominal amount results in equal purchasing power. Suppose a teacher gets hired for $33,000 per year in a certain school district in the year 2000. What would the same school have to pay a new hire in 2014 to have an equivalent salary? Since we know the Consumer Price Index for both years and the pay for the year 2000, we can set up a proportion to calculate the equivalent salary. More specifically, we can set up the proportion CPI in 2000 over the CPI in 2014 equals the pay in 2000 over the pay in 2014. We know from the earlier example that the CPI in the year 2000 was 100, and the CPI in 2014 was 150. The pay in 2000 was 33,000. We do not know the pay in 2014, so we will call that X. To solve, we cross multiply. We have 100x equal to 4,950,000. Solving for x, we divide both sides by 100. Therefore, the equivalent salary for 2014 would be $49,500. While the Consumer Price Index is useful for comparing costs over time, there are some problems with the measure. Some of the items in the basket of goods do not reflect current consumer taste. CPI also does not factor in quality improvement. Think about a personal computer or a television. More specifically, consider what a $200 television would be like today: flat screen, high definition, 40-inch screen at least. Now, think about a $200 television from 10 years ago. That would have been a 36-inch tube television. They are not comparable, but in the calculation of the basket of goods, they are listed as the same. While there are some problems with the CPI, it is an effective measure overall.